And we're back to continue our introduction to Active Directory with Active Directory Federation Services. So far we've covered ADDS and ADCS. We're just going to keep trucking until we get to the end of Active Directory and all of its different components. We start off with ADFS and a quick overview, what it is, what we use it for, and what parts make it up. Jumping right into lesson 1, what is Identity Federation? What are Identity Federation scenarios? And the benefits of deploying. It really comes down to why would we use Active Directory Federation Services? We have domain trusts. We learned about those in Active Directory Domain Services. What's the advantage to this over that? Identity Federation is a process that enables identification, authentication, and authorization across organizational and platform boundaries. This is a nice advantage over Active Directory Domain Services when you want to cross that boundary. We talked about domain services as an organizational boundary. That's what it's for. It's to contain your organization's users, computers, groups, and other objects. An identity federation requires a trust relationship between two organizations or entities and allows organizations to retain control of resource access and their own user and group accounts. Now those two, just to make sure we don't get a little confused, are different. What Active Directory Federation Services allows for is one side of that trust to manage resources and one side to manage accounts. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. Identity Federation scenarios include federation for business to business. If I want to connect to a partner organization and allow their accounts into my applications, or vice versa. Federation for business to consumer or business to employee in a web single sign-on scenario. Enables businesses to provide single sign-on for business partner or other business unit that has a separate domain. This one allows for a business that has a perimeter network domain to provide authentication for internal user accounts. For example, I'm at work, I log into internal websites, no trouble. I'm logged into my computer already. It's using authentication credentials I already have acquired. I go home at the end of the day. I want to get into those same resources. Can I do that? This allows me to do so by logging into those resources through an external path and using Federation services to connect my internal domain account to that external resource and allowing me in with the same credentials. The last scenario, federation within an organization across multiple web applications. If for some reason your organization has web applications that use potentially different authentication stores or different authentication mechanisms that can't automatically authorize a user through Windows itself, this is a scenario you could use. You can also use Federation services for that. Benefits of deploying, well, I think in our conversation about what those scenarios are, we've gone over some of those benefits. Improved security and control over authentication. It doesn't allow for anything additional to, say, Active Directory Domain Services. What it does is it extends that security and control over authentication potentially outside the boundaries of your existing organization. Regulatory compliance, the ability to authenticate users from outside without having to expose your internal authentication mechanisms to the outside world using FS to cross perimeter network boundaries. And interoperability with heterogeneous systems if you're interacting either internally or externally with non-Windows systems. Works with Active Directory Domain Services or Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services, which we're going to get to later. And it can, optionally, here at the bottom, extend Active Directory Domain Services to the internet. We're going to jump right across real quick, and we're going to install this role and take a look at what it comprises. All right, here we are on the desktop of our demo environment. I'm going to go ahead and launch Server Manager. We're going to add roles and features. We've seen this now twice with both domain services and certificate services. And we're going to install our next role, in this case, Federation Services. Once again, we get our features if we need any. We don't in this case. We do have options. There are components to Federation Services we haven't talked about yet. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and install the Federation service itself. We're not going to worry about the proxy or the web agents. We'll talk about them later. We're not actually going to implement them in any demos, but this is the screen where you would select to install those, where you're going to use them. And we'll cover that quickly later on. And we install. This installation shouldn't take very long at all, and you should be able to jump right in and configure within 60 seconds. That's finished. We close this. Now right away we get FS on the left side. Our status, configuration required for Federation service at server. Click the More button, and that's going to take us to our initial configuration requirement. I'm going to leave this and we'll come back to it in a few minutes. So that wraps up our demo. We're going to jump into lesson 2, talk a little bit more in detail about Federation trusts and what they are. What is a Federation trust? Well, it is the ability of one organization to trust another for some component of authentication. In this case, it's a resource partner organization trusting an account partner organization. We're allowing, if we're the resource partner, we're allowing those accounts to authenticate to use our resources. That's the way these trusts flow. It is one way by default. And in this case, in terms of the diagram, an interesting little pointer, the arrows in any diagrams where you see trusts involved, the arrows pointing to where the accounts are. The resource partner is trusting in that direction the account partner. The ADFS components, we've already talked about one of these, the ADDS domain controllers. We've used those in domain services. We've seen them, we've set them up. The rest of these are Federation services specific. ADFS Federation servers, I have, for the sake of the conversation, combined them in definition. Your account Federation servers and resource Federation servers have the same definition, just on different sides of this trust. Federation server is a computer that runs a specialized web service that can issue, manage, and validate requests for security tokens and identity management. They sit on both sides of this equation. They communicate with each other to allow resources and users to communicate with each other. Server proxies, your both account and resource Federation server proxies, allow for the exchanging of the components required to accommodate that authentication through perimeter network boundaries. We don't necessarily want to expose our actual Federation servers to, in this case, the internet or to another organization. So we allow for proxies to sit in perimeter networks to pass those communications through internal firewalls. And the ADFS web agent is a piece of software that sits on a web server and allows for authentication, or allows for applications on that server to honor requests using the tokens provided by Active Directory Federation services. So in this one, we're going to talk a little bit more about how this process works. I talked about it on the last slide. This one's going to walk us through it a step at a time. In step 1, an external user accesses a web application by logging onto that web application. They type that URL into a browser and attempt to get to that application. Because it's a resource in the resource partner organization, I'm going to hit that resource Federation server. That resource Federation server is going to send me to my account Federation server to get a token containing my credentials and tying those to a claim. That's what this arrow between the Active Directory domain services and the account Federation server are. It's going to go and get my user account, connect it to the claims built within the account Federation server, and send that back to me. I'm going to pass that back to the resource Federation server and say, not only am I a user attempting to authenticate, but here are my claims per my account organization into your organization. Those claims get mapped to the resources in the resource organization and sends me to the web server to actually get access to the application. Configuring these components, it's a lot of components. We have Federation servers, we have Federation proxies, we have web agents, we have a number of things to configure to make this all work. So configuration options, what are trust policies? Another demonstration, we're actually going to run through the initial configuration of the Federation services console, the web proxy agent config options we're just going to talk about, and then what are claims, the foundation of this entire service. Service configuration options. To get this running, there are a number of things I have to do. I have to create trust policies. What users do we want to access what resources? And that goes along with the second one, organizational claims. Those claims are very similar to groups. They are going to be used across the boundary to define how access is granted. Account stores, Those are the accounts we're going to be tying to from Active Directory. And then create and configure applications. We need applications to be able to consume Federation services to allow access to those users. Trust policies are the config settings that define how to configure a federated trust and how the federated trust works. Resource partner trust policies include token lifetime, how long the tokens I'm going to get are good for, Federation service URIs and endpoint URLs. Again, these servers have to know about each other. My accounts Federation services and the resource organization Federation services have to be aware of each other. And the option to use a Windows trust relationship for this partner if one exists. In this case, kind of the idea of Federation services is not to use Windows trusts. In addition, the account trust partner policies include location for a certificate. We want to make sure that the resources we're logging into are valid. We're going to use certificates for that. And options for configuring how resource accounts are created. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the demo real quick, and we're going to look at this initial configuration and see what these options look like in the actual software. This is our all servers task details. We did the installation. We got the notification that more configuration was required. Post deploy configuration required. We're just going to click on the link right here in the action column to bring that snap in up. This is what it's going to give me. One of the really nice things about ADFS, especially in this case in Server 2012, is that it gives us a smoother installation and configuration experience. Gives me right here, step 1, configure this Federation server. We want a new service. We don't have one already. This is a new farm. We don't have, in this case, we can use the standalone server. It's just this server. The reason we have the farm option, it says right here, high availability and load balancing. If we have tens of thousands of users accessing resources across boundaries, we may want to allow for high availability. I'm going to keep that here just for the sake of this demonstration. Select the certificate and or port, then click Next. This screen gives me a lot of information. No certificates representing a Federation service name were found in the certificate store. What this is telling me is ADFS needs a certificate because I have to be able to encrypt and decrypt information across this transaction. I don't have a certificate. So we'll leave this here. We're going to jump over to IIS, and we're going to get a certificate. We're essentially, in this case, going to create one of our own. You'll see this the first time you launch Internet Information Services Manager, IIS Manager. We're not going to worry about web platform. I'm going to turn that off. We're already on the server, and right here on the server is Serve Certificates. I don't have any certificates here. I want to create, in this case, again, for the sake of the demonstration, I'm going to create a self-signed certificate really quickly. This is not necessarily what you would do in a scenario involving actual business-to-business transactions. You're going to want trusted certificates from trusted certificate providers to avoid any potential issues with validation of those certificates or verification of the information within them. I'm, in this case, not needing to do all of that. And since this is technically a web server, I'm going to select web hosting. We're going to have to come back to this in a minute, but for now, we'll select this. There's my certificate. Now, just for the sake of, again, demonstration and what you might do next, we're going to go back to Federation Services and go previous, and we're going to try one more time to get that certificate. It's going to give me an error, or still going to give me the same error message. Because right here, no certificates representing a Federation service name were found in the certificate store. So the fact that I have the certificate doesn't quite help me yet. If you read through the rest of this, use the certificate snap-in to install the certificate in the local computer personal certificate store. I didn't put it there. I put it in web hosting, something you might actually run into if you're implementing this process. We're going to jump back to IIS. See this here. Now I have to open the certificate snap-in. We did this in our ADCS demos. Add remove. certificates. That's what I want to manage. I want to manage them for this computer, which is my next option, local. And I'm going to get a view of all the certificates issued to this machine. In this case, it's looking right here, and I don't have any certificates installed. I put the certificate I had issued here under web hosting, server.contoso.com. To get this certificate to where the software needs it, right-click and drag, copy. It's now in the personal certificate store. Now, one more time, we jump back to our wizard. Previous, next. Certificate has been found, and the wizard picks it up, fills it in for us automatically. Service account. In this case, you'll want to select, in this case, this is being asked for because we selected server farm at the beginning. It needs an account to make sure that right here, it's used on all Federation servers in the farm. We need to make sure that these servers can communicate with each other and with other domain resources. So far we've seen a couple of the configuration options. We've crossed some boundaries from the Federation Services wizard to the IIS wizard, or the IIS console, and the certificates console. There are a number of pieces to this equation, and keeping track can sort of be problematic, but hopefully in a normal organization, you'll have these various pieces already set up ahead of time and won't have to do quite all of these steps. But it's handy to know what they are and what the potential pitfalls are, depending on your scenario. So we're going to jump back in here with our account specification. We're going to grab a service account, put in our password. And this one's nice. It gives us a little bit of a recap, what we've done in the wizard, what this is going to do once we click OK. We won't go through all of these details. Let it run. Again, this doesn't take very long at all. And at this point, you're ready to start actually configuring Federation services. I'm going to just let this run in the background. We won't stick around and watch that one. So now that we're back from that demo, we can take a look at a little bit more information about FS. We're not going to go too far into it again as an overview. The web proxy agent configuration options, something we talked briefly about at the very beginning. Now we're going to go into a little bit about what those configuration options are. As I'd mentioned, a web proxy agent is a piece of software that runs on a web server that services claims requests from Federation services directly to your web applications. You have two options: install the ADFS web agent on the IIS server. Windows token-based authentication requires ISAPI extensions. Claims aware authorization can authenticate natively with ASP.NET. Or determine how to collect user credential information from browser clients and web applications outside. If we have some other way we want to do this, it can be customized. ADFS claims, this is the last piece to Federation services. Imagining we've got these servers set up, we've got our proxies in place, we've got our actual Federation servers in place, we've got our applications running. We have to configure claims to allow that access to actually happen. We, in Federation services, can allow one of any of these three types of claims: identity, group, or custom, that allows certain types of users or certain types of accounts in the account partner into the resources in the resource partner. An identity claim, UPN, indicates a Kerberos v5 protocol style user principal name, user at realm. In this case, it may be user at domain. It could also be an email account or an email name or a common name, which is something we would have in our directory. Group membership can also be a basis for a claim, or we have a number of other options we can use to provide the basis for a claim through the custom option, in this case, employee ID number, if that's something you're tracking in your directory service. The module view and takeaways, after this is over, there will be questions provided in the deck that you can look through, answer, check the answers that are provided, and see how you do. Thank you for watching this module. We'll be back with Module 5, Active Directory Rights Management Services, in just a little while.